Hello and welcome. I'm here to demonstrate some ways you can use BIOS to interact with CNDDB data. This video expands upon earlier material, so I'll assume you're already familiar with BIOS 6 at this point. If not, I recommend you watch our other BIOS videos first. You can click on the links below or visit the CDFW Biogeographic Data Branch Tutorials and Training page for more information. For the first example, let's start with the following scenario. I'm working on a project near the city of Lemoore, and I want to get a list of special status species which may be found near my project site. I'll need to use some protected data layers. So first, I'll need to make sure that I'm logged into BIOS to get access to that protected data. Fish and wildlife staff need to log in with their department credentials. Those outside of CDFW will need to use the login for their CNDDB subscription. I click the blue login link near the upper right corner. I already had my password saved, so I can just hit login again. I get a pop-up with some information about terms of use, which I'm already familiar with, so I'm going to hit the gray accept button. First things first, help is always available. If I click on the Tools button alongside the gears at the upper right corner of the screen, I can click on Help in the dropdown. This link will open a detailed user's guide which covers all the functionality in BIOS. I'm going to go back to Tools in the upper right corner. That gives me a drop-down list. Now I'll select CNDDB Quick View. I get a second informational screen with some additional caveats pertaining to Quick View. I click the gray Open Tool button. We never want to leave our users confused and wandering without guidance. If you need instructions, there's a link near the top of the Quick View tool, which will open a user guide that covers all the functionality of this tool. You'll notice that when I opened the tool, the quad boundaries were added to my map as a grid of orange rectangles. If I click and drag my cursor, I can move the map a bit and see Lemoore. Now I'll put my pointer on the city and roll the center wheel on my mouse forward to zoom in on that area. At a zoom level of 11 or closer, the quad names appear. I can look at this map and see that my project falls in the Lemoore quad. In the Quick View tool, I click on the tool Species in 9 Quads, which is the tool with a graphic that looks like a waffle with a red spot in the middle. When I choose the tool, an orange box gets drawn around it. Now I'll click inside the Lemoore quad. The Lemoore quad and the 8 quads surrounding it become highlighted. There are over 60 results. Depending on which internet browser you're using, this list may appear as one long list or a set of pages with shorter lists. I can scroll up and down on each page and jump between them. It's a bit awkward to navigate such a long list. Instead, I can click on the Print Table button to see a list of all the records together in a new tab in my browser. I think it'd be easiest to work with this data in Excel. I'm going to click the Download Table button. Since you're downloading from the cloud, the icon here looks like you're getting a downpour of data. Now I'm going to open my download in Excel. By default, Excel sets all the column widths the same, so things look like a mess at first. I can highlight all those columns and double-click where 2 of them meet to resize everything so it's easier to read. The table is subdivided by species type. The first block of taxa are amphibians, then birds, then invertebrates, and so on, with vascular plants down at the bottom. Near the top of the table, I can see that there are multiple records for Swainson's hawk.
The reason the same species shows up more than once
is that this table includes a row for each quad. 7 of the 9 quads I've selected have records for Swainson's hawk. The data status field shows mapped when CNDDB has one or more element occurrences mapped on that quad. Unprocessed appears when the only records CNDDB has for that species on that quad have not been mapped as an element occurrence. Finally, if CNDDB has occurrences on a quad, but also has additional data for that species waiting in the backlog on the same quad, mapped and unprocessed will appear in the data status field. Next, let's take a look at some of that unprocessed data. I want to see more of the map. I'm going to click the X to close the result table. If I close the Quick View tool, the quad boundaries will disappear. I actually want to see the quad boundaries for the next exercise. I need to hit the arrow next to Geolocation References to show the set of available location layers, and check the box next to 24K quads to show the quads again. Note that I'm using the older layer named just 24K quads, which is what CNDDB was set up to interact with, instead of the 24K quads new layer. I'm going to click the BIOS data button near the top right corner to add layers from the BIOS catalog. I'll type unprocessed and hit the Find button, which looks like a magnifying glass. My first result is unprocessed data from CNDDB online field survey form, which is data set 1002. The red padlock indicates this is a protected layer. Depending on your login credentials, you may also see additional layers that you have access to. Not all users can see all of the protected layers. I'm going to hit the plus sign next to DS1002 to add it to the contents of my map. Now I'll hit the X at the upper right corner to close the Add Layers tool. The unprocessed layer was added to the table of contents, but it's turned off by default. I need to check the box next to the layer to make it visible in the map. I also need to click on the name of the layer to activate it. This will highlight the layer name in blue, indicating this is the active layer that tools will interact with. Let's take a look at these unprocessed records. I'm going to go to Tools in the upper right corner and choose Select by Graphics from the drop-down. I may need to pan or zoom the map a bit to ensure I can see the same 9 quads that I looked at earlier. Now I'm going to choose the Draw a Rectangle tool and draw a rectangle across the same 9 quads I looked at earlier using the Quick View tool. The points I selected became highlighted in blue, and the attributes of those records appear in the table below. I'm going to hit the X to close the Select by Graphics tool. If I click on the scientific name column header in the table, I can sort the records alphabetically. If I click the up arrow at the upper right-hand corner of the table, I can see more of the table at once. Here I can see details about a set of Swainson's hawk records. While Quick View only told me that Swainson's hawks were detected somewhere on a quad, this layer shows the actual survey locations, dates, and specifics about each detection. However, there are fewer records here than there were unprocessed quads indicated by Quick View. Why? The reason is only the unprocessed data, which was submitted through the online field survey form, is displayed in this layer. The online field survey form requires people to provide a set of coordinates and other information for each record in a standardized way. Because of this, we can share those records with our subscribers almost immediately. CNDDB receives many other types of data which will not fit into the online field survey form data model. For example, When someone sends us a PDF with a narrative report talking about the surveys they did last year, we can't add that information to the online field survey form layer. When CNDDB first receives such reports, we give them a quick review before filing them in our backlog. During that first review, we record information which will appear in Quick View, including which species were found and which quads and counties those species were found in. This means a report for a year's work will contribute to the set of unprocessed quads in Quick View, but subscribers won't see that type of precise data which gets recorded through the online field survey form. In summary, all of our unprocessed data will appear on the set of quads in Quick View. Only those unprocessed records which were submitted through the online field survey form will also be visible as points in BIOS while they remain in the CNDDB backlog. I'm going to hide the attributes of the selected feature by hitting the X on the table near the bottom. I'll remove the selection by hitting the X under graphics layers in my map context. I'm also going to uncheck the box for the unprocessed data layer to hide those points. The Quick View tool has two modes. Earlier, I showed you the first mode, which allows you to see all the special status species known from a set of quads. The second mode allows you to see a statewide map of all the quads where one species or subspecies is known from. I'm going to open the CNDDB Quick View tool again. Under View CNDDB Quad Data by Species, I'm going to type spotted owl.
Now I can choose between northern spotted owl and California spotted owl. When I choose California spotted owl, I'm shown a map of all the quads where detections for this bird have been documented in the state. This is a good time to point out that while spotted owl quad data appear in Quick View, our spotted owl detection data do not appear in the CNDDB occurrence data. To see spotted owl detections, you need to look at the spotted owl database layers. I'll show you how to add those layers later in this presentation.
For my next example exercise, let's say I'm reviewing a project at the Highway 96 bridge at Soames Bar, and I want to see what special status species are mapped in CNDDB within a mile of that site. First, I need to zoom to my project site. I'll go to Tools and choose GeoFind Location. The GeoFind tool offers me a list of ways I could locate a site. I can choose to enter coordinates, an address, PLSS, or other information. I'm going to select Geographic Name from the drop-down. I type Soames Bar into the search bar and hit the gray Find button. I get 3 results. I'm going to hit the Go button next to the one that says simply Soames Bar. This zooms the map to the general vicinity, and I can see where the bridge over the river is. I'm going to use the Zoom Out button to get a wider view of the area. This red dot represents the location of Soames Bar as it appears in the geographic name database. I can remove this point by hitting the X next to GeoFind layer in the table of contents. Hitting this X will close the GeoFind location tool. Now I need to add the CNDDB occurrence layer to the map. I click on the Add BIOS Data button. I type CNDDB into the search bar and click the Find button. Depending on what your permissions are, you may see different results here. Government users would see both the government and commercial CNDDB layers. Commercial users would not see the government layer. Both of these layers contain the same occurrences, but they're displayed differently. I'm going to hit the plus sign to add the commercial version of the CNDDB to my map, and then close the Add BIOS Layers tool. I need to check the box to turn on the CNDDB layer, and then click on the layer name to make it the active layer, which becomes highlighted in blue. Now I want to select all the CNDDB features within 1 mile of the bridge. I go to Tools and choose Select by Graphics. I specify I want to create a buffer with a radius of 1 mile and click the Apply Buffer box. I choose the Draw a Point graphic tool, which looks like a pin. Now I'll click on the bridge. I can now see the purple 1 mile radius buffer centered on my project location, and the CNDDB occurrence features which intersect that buffer are highlighted in blue. In the table below, I can see information about those occurrences. To view the full text information for these occurrences in RareFind, I need to click on the ellipsis to show additional options for the CNDDB layer. I can then choose various tools to interact with this layer. The tool, which is labeled RF, will open my selection in RareFind. A new tab is added to my browser, and I get another informational pop-up about uses of CNDDB, which I'm already familiar with. Now I'm looking at the Results tab in RareFind, showing information about the element occurrences within a mile of my project. If I click on the Reports tab, I can choose Full Report with Sources, which will generate a PDF that provides all the text information available for those occurrences. If I jump back to the BIOS tab in my browser, I can see the map once again. Remember that the CNDDB layer cannot be relied upon to provide a complete list of all special status species in an area. Some reasons for this are that not all data is submitted to us, some data received by us remains unprocessed, and other data may appear in other BIOS layers, such as the Spotted Owl database or other databases. This project was located along a river, but my occurrence results didn't include any fish species. I happen to know that coho and steelhead are present in this area. There are also northern spotted owls in the area, but those didn't appear in my results either. If I had checked Quick View, I would have seen that there's other special status species known from the area, including northern spotted owl, steelhead, and coho. I could then search for other data in the BIOS library to see which additional layers are available that could provide me with more information on each of those species.
RareFind is an application designed for making text-based queries for element occurrences. For this example, let's say you needed to find the distribution of federal and state-listed plants and animals in Humboldt County. Let's begin a new query. We want to filter the CNDDB for species that are listed. To do this, expand the status query criteria, and then expand federal state listing status. Let's check on endangered and threatened under federal listing status, and endangered, threatened, and rare under state listing status. We're including rare because it's the listing status for plants. Between the federal and state listing statuses, you can see that there are radio buttons for and or. By default, or is selected, which is more inclusive. This means the results would include taxa with one of these checked federal listing statuses, one of these 3 state listing statuses, or a combination of both. Whenever you're working in RareFind, you can click on these blue Help buttons. They're tailored to the section of the application you're working in. In this case, Help gives us a visual representation of the differences between using and or. At the bottom of the Help window, there are links to the metadata that further defines the fields in question. When you're done, just click on the X at the top right corner to close the window. Now that we've filtered for listed species, we want to narrow the results to only those which occur in Humboldt County. Toward the bottom of the list is a section named Locational Features. Let's expand that to Find County. Choose Humboldt from the pick list. Now you see that the query summary at the top was immediately updated. Before you run a query, it's always a good idea to read the query summary to make sure you have all the criteria you want included.
Keep in mind that the query summary displays the set of instructions that will let RareFind know which records should be excluded from the results. There are many more query criteria I could have added here, but specifying more criteria usually decreases the number of records returned. For instance, if I were to add a set of California rare plant ranks to this query, my results could only include plant occurrences, since only plant taxa can have rare plant ranks assigned to them. At this point, I've selected all I need for this query. So let's go ahead and run it.
After running the query, you'll be brought to the Results tab. You can review the results here, or go to the Reports tab to generate PDF reports. Part of our task is to look at the distribution of the listed species. BIOS is the best way to view the data spatially. Let's push our results to BIOS by clicking on the BIOS tab up top. You can see that we have options to choose from. We want to see all the listed species at once, so let's click on the second option, Show Map with All Returned Occurrences. When you click this option, your browser may ask you to allow pop-ups. Remember to allow pop-ups for BIOS to open on a different browser tab. If you already had BIOS open, the session would be updated. CNDDB would be added and loaded if it hasn't already been added, and all the occurrences for listed species in Humboldt will be selected. Now that we've gone over RareFind, let's talk some more about spotted owls and where their information can and cannot be found. Earlier, we learned that we can find spotted owl information in QuickView, but not in the CNDDB occurrence data. Let's try querying RareFind for spotted owl. To do this, expand the species name or code query criteria. I'll type spotted into the search bar and hit search. Let's select both spotted owl subspecies and add them to our query. Double-clicking adds them to the right-hand box. Now I will run the query. You can see that the query results returned two elements, the two spotted owl subspecies. When we look below, we see occurrences by selected element, 0 occurrences returned. We can double-click on an element to get some habitat and status information about that subspecies. But again, there were no occurrences found. There's no occurrence information in RareFind because there are no spotted owl occurrences in the CNDDB. But let's say you checked QuickView and spotted owls are included in your quads species list. So where's the data? It's in the spotted owl database. Let's go back to the BIOS viewer. The layers are already loaded when you use the CNDDB spotted owl bookmark. Here you can see them in the table of contents. If you aren't in the bookmark, you can add them by clicking on BIOS data and entering spotted owl in the search bar. Here you can see green checkboxes showing that both of these layers are already visible in BIOS. Spotted owl observations, DS704, is our observations layer and contains all of our northern spotted owl and California spotted owl detection and survey data. Spotted owl observations spider diagram, DS705, is a visual reference layer that allows you to see which observations are associated with the same site. Detailed descriptions of these layers can be found in their metadata and in the Spotted Owl Observations Database Management Framework, which can be found on our web pages. Want to include spotted owl information in a report? You can use the Spotted Owl Reports tool to produce PDFs with lists of sites and observations in your search area.
Let's demonstrate how to use the Spotted Owl Reports tool in the BIOS viewer. First, you'll want to zoom to your area of interest using whichever method you prefer. For this demo, I'll use the GeoFind Location tool.
In the Locate By drop-down, I'm going to select Geographic Name, enter Goldbug Mine, select Siskiyou County, and then hit Find. Now I'll hit the Go button to zoom to that site. Next, I'll go to the Reports tool. Click on Tools, and then Spotted Owl Reports. Note that users need to be logged in with their password to be able to see this tool. You'll notice that the PLSS sections layer is now visible, and that Spotted Owl Observations, DS704, has been added to the map. I'll click the PLSS Select tool, then select the sections of interest by clicking to create vertices, then double-clicking to form a polygon, and complete the selection. I just want to select sections 27 and 34, so I'll click in section 27, click in section 34, and then double-click at another point in section 34 to complete my selection.
Note that some of the features which were selected are in the section adjacent to the two sections I chose. SIS 0533 was highlighted because some of the observations associated with the site are located in section 27. If I needed to add any text to the reports, I could do so in the Reports Notes text box. And now we'll generate the reports. I'll click the button for Spotted Owl Sites Found to get a list of all the sites associated with the selection. As we saw on the map, SIS 0533 is included, even though it falls in section 26 adjacent to the search area. That's because there are observations associated with this site which fall in section 27 within the search area. Now I'll click on Observations Reported to get a list of all the observations associated with the selection. As we saw earlier, observations that are not in the search area are included in the observations reports because they're associated with the sites that are in the search area. Today, we learned how to use Quick View to get quad information on special status species for an area, view unprocessed CNDDB online field survey form records, select CNDDB occurrences within a given distance of a site, use RareFind to view attributes of selected occurrences, and view maps and create reports from the Spotted Owl Observations database. You can use the timestamps in the video description to jump to previous sections in this video. For more information about our tools and products, please visit the CDFW Biogeographic Data Branch training website.